about the aspects of our Footprints programs and about homeschooling in general as well at times. Let's first start and talk about how we decided to incorporate Charlotte Mason's ideas into our Footprints programs and why we did that.
Sorry, getting rid of a cat. So I think the basic premises with our Footprints programs is that using literature, you immediately take a huge leap in the Charlotte Mason philosophy, because the idea is to use living books, which can mean a variety of things, but in the context of Footprints, it's about people living in the time, experiencing that part of history or science or whatever the subject is that you're studying as first person, which kind of draws the children into the story and into the moments that the characters in the stories are having, and allows them to live alongside them. So that is the basic premise for Footprints, and the way that we sort of correlate it with the Charlotte Mason philosophy, don't you think?
Yeah, I think that's so many of our clients have said how their children just love the characters in the story and they can identify with them. And that's one of Charlotte Mason's things, that we connect our children with the ideas of great authors, and they have an experience through the reading of a story that's set in a different time and a different place. And that is what gives them insight into the ideas of the author and of the people who were living at a time, because every story is set in a time, that's history, and in a place, and that's geography. And by being able to almost walk in the shoes of the characters in our stories, the children really come to understand the circumstances of those times and places, and they learn so much through that, instead of just dry, boring facts like we had to learn from textbooks when we were at school.
Yeah, exactly. And then obviously we went along and we drew out lessons from each of the chapters, where we tried to integrate the program to make it cover, or what we call it as a literature-based unit study, so that as you're reading the history or the geography, or even the character lessons that the kids and the families are learning, we would draw those lessons out. And one of the strongest components that come through, which again is a Charlotte Mason principle, is that the connection with nature. We have such a vast, amount of biomes on the southern continent of Africa. Obviously, the Western Cape has got the most biodiverse plant population in the world, they say. So it's a shame not to tap into those things as homeschoolers. And Footprints allows you to do that in a natural way. And I know that there's many times when people, it used to be on the old Yahoo groups that we used to run all those donkeys years ago. And now even on Facebook, you still see people saying things are just not going right today. And our advice through the years is pack up the school books, take them outdoors, sit on a picnic blanket in a botanical garden or in a lovely green space and read to your children, and do that in that space. And that goes along with what Charlotte Mason says about children being outdoors for the better part of their primary school or primary aged years. And Footprints allows you to naturally integrate that into their world.
Yeah, let's also talk about narration and how, instead of doing testing and workbooks, Charlotte Mason says that children should tell back what they've learned.
Yeah, so the whole principle is we love reading to our kids, you and I, Shirley, and we've had enough of them to indulge ourselves with that again and again. And when you're sitting cuddling on a couch and reading, nobody actually feels like they're learning. And I think the same thing goes with narration. Sure, you can formalize it. You can make kids write and tell back in a very formal environment. But the way that we played with that in the home was very simply the next morning, just to give a refresher, we would have one of the children tell us back what happened yesterday and what period were they set in and where were they? Not too many questions, but, because then you break the natural flow of language. So it was simply, let's get up to date with where we were. And sometimes you'd remember to do it in a cyclical way, that one child doesn't always tell or dominate the space. But, you get different kids, and some are very verbal and others prefer to write it down, and some, like we've had both in our family, prefer mom to write it down. And all of those things are good ways of narrating.
Yeah, in my home I found that if it was done casually, then everybody was very enthusiastic about recapping what we read last time we read. But if it came across that mom's testing you, then they were a little bit more reluctant. And so it should never be portrayed as mom is testing you. It's just, let's share what we've learned and what we enjoyed and what was funny or what was scary or what was the hook that we ended on at the end of the last chapter. What do we think is going to happen next? And you make it spontaneous and casual, and then the children actually enjoy that conversation. And it's a great way as a parent to be able to assess what was significant to them and what they've retained.
Those are the easy things to do with Charlotte Mason. One of the bigger things to do is for parents to understand that the education is the child's own business. We tend to still see our children's minds as empty, that we've got to plug information into. And that is where often parents fall into the trap of, I could never homeschool because I'm not a qualified teacher. Which is not correct at all, because if we see our children as these empty creations with gaping holes for brains, as versus somebody like Charlotte Mason explains that education is a science of relations, and our job is to actually connect them with information and allow them to then follow it on. And we always have that lovely story about one of the first Footprints families that ever used the program. And in the first book, we look at the Portuguese coming around the Cape, and we have that knot tying activity. And he decided that he needed to tie knots for 6 weeks. Well, the fact is that he's now a 25-year-old man and he's about to get married, and he's still tying knots because that little thing sowed a seed in his life, which got him into yachting, and he now sails yachts around the world for people to fetch them in different ports. Not everybody has that kind of story, but the fact is that education is a science of relations, and while it's good for us to have resources that can give our children ideas, we don't need to see them as these empty buckets waiting to be filled.